I helped my sister after her divorce. Then she betrayed me. Before we begin the story, take a moment to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support means the world to our channel and helps us spread more shocking true stories to light. Now, let's get started. My name is Emily, and until last year, I thought I had a pretty normal family. I'm 31 years old and work as a sales manager at Everton Construction. I've always been the responsible one, the one who followed the rules, got good grades, and landed a stable career. My older sister, Rachel, is 35, and she's the complete opposite. She married her high school sweetheart, Jake, right after college and settled into the life she always wanted, being a full-time mom to their 2 boys, Ethan and Caleb, now 12 and 10. While I was climbing the corporate ladder, Rachel was packing school lunches and attending PTA meetings. Then, one phone call shattered everything. I remember it vividly, the sound of Rachel's sobs so intense that I could barely understand her words. "He left me, Emily," she gasped between shaky breaths. "Jake just packed his bags and left. He said, he hasn't been happy for years. 15 years of marriage, gone in an instant." I barely remember the drive to her house that night. But when I got there, the sight nearly broke me. Rachel was sitting on the kitchen floor, surrounded by crumpled tissues, her eyes swollen and red. Her boys were locked in their rooms, confused and heartbroken. "What am I supposed to do?" Rachel whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I haven't worked since before Ethan was born. Jake paid for everything. How am I supposed to take care of them now?" I didn't have an answer. But I made a promise, one I had no idea would change everything. "We'll figure it out, Rachel. I won't let you go through this alone." At the time, I meant it. I just had no idea what that promise would cost me. The weight of responsibility. At first, I truly believed we could handle it. Jake, on the other hand, had no intention of making things easier. He refused to pay child support until Rachel took him to court. Even then, the amount he was forced to provide barely covered groceries. And the beautiful suburban house they'd lived in? Jake kept it, since he had owned it before they got married. Rachel and the boys were left with nowhere to go. I remember the day I sat on her couch, sorting through boxes, while she sniffled into a tissue. "I can help you find an apartment," I offered, trying to sound optimistic. Rachel let out a hollow laugh. "With what money? I have no income, Emily. Rent, bills, groceries, how am I supposed to survive?" That's when I made the offer that would change everything. "I'll cover it." She blinked at me. "What?" "I'll pay your rent until you get back on your feet." Rachel's lip trembled. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering. You and the boys need a home. And I can afford to help." My parents supported the idea wholeheartedly. My dad, a retired accountant, and my mom, a former elementary school teacher, stepped up as well, picking the boys up from school, helping with homework, making sure dinner was on the table. And for a while, things seemed manageable. Rachel found a part-time job at a local boutique, and I continued transferring money for rent while occasionally pitching in for other expenses. It wasn't ideal, but at least she was trying. But then, something changed. Rachel wasn't moving toward independence. She was sinking deeper into victimhood. The never-ending support. At first, I brushed it off. Rachel had been through a lot, of course. She needed time to adjust. But days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And instead of working towards standing on her own, she seemed to cling tighter to her pain. "Jake ruined my life, Emily," became her daily mantra. I lost count of how many times I heard her say it. I had everything planned out. I was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom until the boys went to college. Now look at me. I tried to be sympathetic. I really did. Maybe talking to someone would help. I suggested one evening, "I can pay for a therapist if." The look she gave me could have frozen fire. "I don't need someone to tell me how to feel, Emily. I need money to live." From that moment on, every conversation seemed to follow the same pattern. If I mentioned I was busy, she'd call our parents, and they'd listen to her for hours, validating every ounce of her anger. Later, my mom would call me. "Your sister is really struggling. Honey, she needs us to be there for her." Being there for her? I was already paying her rent, buying groceries, and covering whatever unexpected expense popped up. And the expenses never stopped. It wasn't just rent anymore. It was, "The boys need new soccer cleats. The fridge is making a weird noise. Ethan's math grades are slipping. He needs a tutor." Each request seemed reasonable on its own. But then one night, I sat at my kitchen table, sipping a glass of wine while staring at a spreadsheet on my laptop. I added up everything I'd spent on Rachel and the boys over the past 6 months. When I saw the total, I nearly choked on my drink. A third of my monthly income was going to my sister. I pressed my fingers against my temples, feeling the dull throb of an impending headache. This wasn't sustainable. That Sunday, at family dinner, I decided to bring it up. The conversation that changed everything. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were supposed to be a time to unwind. A chance to enjoy mom's home-cooked meals and catch up as a family. But that night, I could barely taste my food. I waited until everyone had finished eating, until the boys had wandered off to play video games in the living room. Then, I took a deep breath. I've been thinking, I started, keeping my tone light. It's been almost a year since the divorce. I'm happy to keep helping with rent, but some of the extra expenses are adding up. Maybe it's time to look for a full-time position? Silence. Rachel's fork scraped against her plate. When she finally spoke, her voice was dangerously quiet. Are you saying you're tired of helping me? I swallowed hard. I'm saying it might be time to take the next step toward financial independence. The boys are in school all day, and mom and dad help with pickup. There are plenty of jobs with regular hours. Rachel pushed back her chair so hard that it tipped over. I can't believe you, Emily. Her voice shook with fury. I am still recovering from Jake destroying our family. And now you're attacking me too? I held up my hands. Rachel, I'm not attacking you. I'm just, come on, boys, we're leaving. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. Ethan and Caleb hesitated, glancing at me before mumbling quick goodbyes. Then the front door slammed so hard that the family photos on the wall rattled. I let out a slow breath, my heart pounding. I turned to my parents, expecting at least some support. Instead, my dad frowned, while my mom shook her head in disappointment. How could you be so selfish? Emily? Mom asked, her voice tight. I blinked. Selfish? Mom, I've been paying for everything. I just suggested she look for a full-time job. Mom crossed her arms. Your sister is a single mother of 2 boys. You're single with no children. You don't need as much money as she does. A cold, sinking feeling settled in my chest. So I should just keep bankrolling her indefinitely? I asked, my voice hollow. Mom's lips pressed together in a firm line. It means not being greedy when your family needs you. I stared at them. These were the same people who had always taught me that family comes first. But apparently, that only applied when I was the one giving. I pushed my chair back and stood. I should go. Thanks for dinner. As I drove home, the weight of the conversation settled over me like a suffocating blanket. For the first time in my life, I felt completely alone. The final straw. A week passed after that disastrous family dinner. A week of silence from Rachel. No calls, no texts, nothing. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message from her. Need $500 for the boys' clothes. They've outgrown everything and look terrible. Please send today. I stared at the message for a long time. There was no hello, no acknowledgement of our argument. Not even a proper, please, just a last-minute afterthought. My finger hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to finally set a boundary and make it clear that I wasn't just an open wallet. But then I thought about Ethan and Caleb. It wasn't their fault their mom was like this. With a sigh, I transferred the money. Rachel's only response? A thumbs-up emoji. I clenched my jaw and set my phone down. This wasn't support anymore. This was expectation. The reward for hard work. At least work was going well. At Everton Construction, I was respected. My effort was noticed. My opinions mattered. When I closed a deal, people congratulated me, not asked for more. I threw myself into a high-stakes project, securing a contract for a massive new office complex downtown. The client was known for being difficult, but I spent weeks crafting the perfect pitch. And it worked. You nailed it, Emily, my boss said after we signed the contract. Expect a solid commission for this one. A week later, the bonus hit my account. For the first time in months, I felt a rush of excitement that had nothing to do with Rachel. I had been driving my Honda Civic for 7 years. It was reliable, but I had always dreamed of upgrading to something a little nicer. So, for once, I decided to do something for myself. That Saturday, I visited 3 dealerships and test drove half a dozen cars. By the end of the day, I was the proud owner of a sleek silver Audi A4. Not the flashiest car on the lot, not the most expensive, but mine. As I drove it home, a rare feeling washed over me, pride. This was the result of my hard work, my dedication, my success. Then, my thoughts drifted to Rachel. Her car was a 15-year-old Toyota with over 200,000 miles on it. She had complained about it constantly, the weird noises, the broken AC, the way Ethan and Caleb were embarrassed to be seen in it. My perfectly good Honda would be a massive upgrade for her. The gift that wasn't good enough. The next family dinner came around fast. I deliberately drove my old Honda, excited for the surprise. As I stepped inside my parents' house, I heard Rachel's voice before I even saw her. And then my manager had the nerve to ask if I could cover a shift on Saturday. I told her, I have children, you know, I can't just drop everything. And she had the audacity to say, other single moms at work manage just fine. Can you believe that? My parents nodded along sympathetically. Mom patted Rachel's hand. Some people just don't understand how hard you have it. Dear. I bit my tongue and greeted everyone. Throughout dinner, Rachel dominated the conversation, complaining about her boss, her coworkers, and, of course, Jake. I waited for the right moment. Finally, as Mom served dessert, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my Honda keys, and slid them across the table. I have something for you, Rachel, I said, feeling genuinely excited. I bought a new car yesterday, so I want you to have my Honda. It's in great shape, has low mileage, and would be perfect for taking the boys to school and activities. I expected gratitude. Instead, Rachel picked up the keys like they were contaminated. What did you get? She asked. An Audi, I said, still smiling. Nothing fancy, just an A4. The silence was excruciating. My parents exchanged glances with Rachel, a whole conversation happening without words. Then Rachel dropped the keys onto the table with a clatter. While I can barely afford groceries. You're out buying luxury cars? I blinked. It's not a luxury car. And I'm giving you my Honda. It's worth at least $10. Rachel suddenly kicked the keys across the floor. I don't want your hand-me-downs. Emily, she snapped. If you really cared about me and the boys, you would have given us the new car. I stared at her, stunned. You expect me to give you a brand new Audi? Why not? Rachel folded her arms. What do you even need it for? To impress clients? To feel important? I'm struggling to keep my children clothed and fed. I turned to my parents, silently pleading for them to say something. Instead, Dad cleared his throat. Emily, maybe you should have consulted us before making such a large purchase. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. Consulted you? It's my money. My hard-earned money. Mom nodded. If you have enough to buy an Audi, maybe that money could have been better spent helping Rachel get back on her feet. But since you already bought it, just give it to her. Something inside me snapped. I slammed my hand on the table. The plates rattled. Ethan's glass of milk spilled over. It's my money. My voice shook with fury. I worked for it. I have helped you, Rachel, because I love you. But this is ridiculous. If my Honda isn't good enough for you, then you get nothing. I pushed back from the table, walked over to where the keys had landed, and picked them up. Mom's face paled. Emily, don't be dramatic. No, I'm done. My voice was firm. I'm not paying your rent anymore. I'm not sending you money for clothes or tutors or whatever else you decide you need. Figure it out yourself. I turned and walked out. No one stopped me. As I drove home, my hands were shaking, but for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The aftermath of saying no. That night, my phone exploded with messages. First from Rachel, then my mom, then my dad. Rachel, are you serious right now? You're really going to abandon your nephews because you're too selfish to help your own family? Mom. Emily, I don't know what's gotten into you, but you need to apologize. This isn't how we raised you. Dad. Think about what you're doing. Family comes first. I ignored them all. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Rachel. Rent is due tomorrow. Please transfer the money. No greeting. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a demand. For the first time in a year, I replied with a single word. No. The response was immediate. My phone rang. I declined the call. It rang again. And again. Then came the texts. What do you mean no? Are you seriously going to make me and the boys homeless? Mom and Dad are furious with you. I turned my phone off and went to bed early. By morning, I had 27 missed calls and over 50 messages. I deleted them all without reading a single one. The knock on my door. That evening, at exactly 7 p.m., the pounding started. I already knew who it was. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home, but I knew this confrontation was inevitable. Better to get it over with. I opened the door to find Rachel, Mom, and Dad standing there, their faces full of righteous indignation. Rachel stormed past me into my apartment without an invitation. Mom and Dad followed. No one sat down. Mom was the first to speak. Emily, This has gone far enough. Your sister needs to pay rent tomorrow, or she and the boys will be evicted. I crossed my arms. That's not my problem anymore. Rachel let out a sharp laugh. Not your problem? You promised to help me. You said you'd pay my rent. I did. My voice was calm. For nearly a year, on top of clothes, tutoring, and every little emergency you threw my way, I have spent thousands helping you. Rachel's face twisted in anger. So what? You can afford it. You just bought a brand new car. I let out a slow breath. With my money, that I earned. And when I tried to give you my perfectly good Honda, you threw the keys on the floor like they were trash. Rachel's jaw tightened. Because you were flaunting your new car while I'm struggling. I met her glare. Rachel, you're not struggling because of me. You're struggling because you refuse to get a full-time job. Because you put more effort into complaining about Jake than moving forward. And because you expect everyone else to fix your life for you. Mom stepped in. Emily, we are family. Family helps each other. I have helped. Mom, I snapped. But it's never enough, is it? No matter how much I give. You all act like I'm a selfish monster for wanting anything for myself. Rachel scoffed. Because you are selfish. You're single with no kids. What do you even need money for? I stared at her, stunned. To live my life. To save for my future. To enjoy the things I work hard for. I shook my head. Why is that so hard for you to understand? Rachel threw her hands in the air. Because I need that money more than you do. I took a deep breath. Then, in the calmest voice I had ever used, I said, then earn it, like I did. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Mom broke the silence. If you don't help your sister, Emily, you're not the daughter we raised. I exhaled slowly. No, Mom, you raised me to be Rachel's ATM. And I'm done with it. Rachel's face contorted with rage. Fine, keep your precious money, but don't expect to be part of this family anymore. I felt nothing. No sadness. No regret. Just relief. If being part of this family means being used and taken for granted, then maybe that's for the best. Rachel's eyes burned with fury. You'll regret this. I held the door open. Goodbye, Rachel. She stormed out. Mom hesitated, but when Dad followed Rachel, she sighed and left, too. The door slammed shut behind them. I stood there, staring at the door. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The price of freedom. The next morning, my apartment was eerily quiet. No texts, no calls. For the first time in a year, my phone wasn't blowing up with demands. It was peaceful. I took a deep breath, savoring the silence, but deep down, a gnawing guilt still lingered. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I should have given Rachel more time. Then, as if the universe wanted to remind me exactly why I had cut them off, my phone buzzed again. Rachel. I hesitated before reading it. The boys miss their aunt. Ethan asked about you at breakfast today. I clenched my jaw. Then, another message followed. Caleb is struggling in school again. He could really use a tutor. You used to care about them. I don't understand how you can be so heartless. There it was. The emotional manipulation. I had seen it coming from miles away. First, the guilt trip about the boys. Then, the money request disguised as concern. It hurt, God. It hurt, to think about Ethan and Caleb. But I knew exactly what Rachel was doing. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She was reaching out because she still wanted something from me. I put my phone down and didn't respond. Moving forward, work became my refuge. Without the weight of supporting Rachel, I felt lighter, stronger. My bank account was growing again. For the first time in years, I started doing things for me. I signed up for a yoga class. I reconnected with old friends. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. It felt strange to put myself first, but it also felt right. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. A familiar face at the mall. I had just finished some holiday shopping when I spotted a familiar figure in the food court. Ethan. He was with a friend, chatting and laughing. I hesitated, unsure if I should approach. Did he even want to see me? But then he turned, and his eyes lit up. Aunt Emily. I barely had time to react before he jogged over. Hey, kiddo, I said, giving him a warm smile. How've you been? He shrugged. Okay, I guess. We're living with Grandma and Grandpa now. I nodded. Yeah, I heard. How's school? His face brightened. I made the basketball team. My coach says I might start next game. I grinned. That's awesome. I'd love to come watch if that's okay with you. Ethan's eyes lit up even more. Really? That would be so cool. Our next game is Thursday at 4:30. I'll be there. The basketball game. That Thursday. I sat in the back of the bleachers, watching Ethan play. He was good, lanky, quick, natural talent written all over him. When he made his first basket, I cheered loudly. He glanced at the stands, spotted me, and grinned from ear to ear. It was the first time in months that I felt truly connected to my family again. An unexpected reunion. After the game, I waited near the parking lot. Ethan ran up to me, his gym bag slung over his shoulder. "You came," he said, still out of breath. I chuckled. "I told you I would." He gestured toward a familiar sedan. "Grandma's here. You want to say hi?" I hesitated, but before I could decide, Mom stepped out of the car. She froze when she saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, in a voice much softer than I expected, she said, "Emily, what are you doing here?" I glanced at Ethan, who was watching us like a referee before a tense game. I ran into Ethan at the mall. He invited me to his game. Mom's gaze softened slightly. "He's getting quite good, isn't he?" I nodded. "He's amazing." A brief, awkward silence stretched between us. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I took a deep breath. "Would you like to get coffee sometime? Just the two of us?" Mom hesitated. Then, she nodded. "I'd like that." A different kind of conversation. A few days later, I met Mom at a quiet little cafe. At first, the conversation was awkward. We tiptoed around the real issue, talking about the weather, my job, her garden. Then, finally, I decided to be direct. "I miss you and Dad. And the boys. But I can't go back to how things were before." Mom stirred her coffee slowly. "Rachel is still struggling, Emily." I sighed. "I know, and I'm sorry for that. But I can't be her safety net anymore." Mom was quiet for a moment. Then, to my surprise, she said, "Your father and I might have enabled that." I looked up, startled. She let out a small sigh. "We've always babied Rachel, even when you were kids. She was the fragile one. And you were the strong one." I swallowed hard. Being the strong one doesn't mean I have to carry everyone else. "Mom." She nodded slowly. "No, it doesn't. And maybe we expected too much from you." It wasn't a full apology. But it was a start. What family really means. Mom and I agreed to have dinner with Dad and Rachel, to try to clear the air. But the night before, Rachel made her stance clear. She told Mom she would leave the house for dinner if I was there. She wasn't ready to forgive me. I wasn't sure if she ever would be. Instead, I had dinner with just my parents. It was awkward and tense at times. But we managed to reach a fragile understanding. They agreed to stop pressuring me to support Rachel financially. And I agreed to be more present for the boys when possible. "She'll come around eventually," Dad said as I was leaving. "She just needs more time." Maybe she would. Maybe she wouldn't. But I realized something important that night. I was okay either way. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty for setting boundaries. I wasn't a terrible sister. I wasn't heartless. I had spent a year trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. Now, I was choosing myself. And that didn't make me selfish. It made me free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with your friends. And subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.